first of all, to Endeavour for inviting me to present today, and it's awesome to meet all of you guys, and I hope that we can continue to collaborate and connect outside of this webinar. I'm going to try and keep this top line quite punchy, interactive, and I think the best way is if anyone's got any questions and stuff, just throw them in when they want. Just cut me off and whenever you need to. I'll start off by just sort of giving a bit of an introduction to Food People for the guys that don't know who we are. So the company is 3 years old now. I set it up with my business partner, Luke, and we're the only end-to-end talent solutions business for the food industry. We work across every single segment of food. So from farm to fork, we touch and support and collaborate with businesses in all of these different silos of food. And on the right-hand side, these are the kind of typical sort of business or functional areas that we would support on. Okay, so essentially we're a recruitment business for food. I just kind of want to touch on our journey, just so you can get a little bit of background on us and so yeah, it was set up by myself and Luke in October 17. We hired our first employee, Danny, who we spoke about a moment ago, in January. And then in December, from January 19 to December 19, we were the fastest growing recruitment company according to LinkedIn. We hired 10 people that year, and we had 144% revenue growth. We had to move offices 3 times in a serviced office, which became ridiculously expensive. So we took the jump in January and fitted out an office in Onyx Tower in the Greens, which we actually never got to work in until after lockdown. But we're in now, and it's almost finished. Today we are 13 people, and we have 2 non-exec directors. The reason why we got non-exec directors in early is because I'm 35, Luke's 32. We're both very, very young leaders, and of course we have gaps and we have areas where we need to develop. So we brought in 2 senior guys that we respected from the industry to help with us, and that's been an incredible decision for us. One of our biggest achievements last year was navigating through COVID without redundancy. It was super, super tough, and there are some points in this presentation around kind of what our employees thought of us then and now, and how that's changed. A huge win for us in September last year was winning the Pure Harvest account. So we hired a recruitment team on behalf of Pure Harvest, which are one of the fastest growing startups in the region, building vertical farms across Saudi, Kuwait, and the UAE. And we're helping them grow to a team of circa 100 people over the next 18 months. Also last year, one of our biggest achievements was a Together for Lebanon event that we did. And there's some photos I can show you earlier because it actually ties into employer branding. When we put on a charity evening to support the Lebanon disaster, and we raised just below 30,000 dirham for food and shelter for the people that were affected. And today, one of our biggest achievements is getting to over 45,000 followers with an average engagement rate that sits north of 5%. And again, that's quite important for this topic around employer branding and how people perceive us in the market. The topic is around employer branding. I suppose before I jump in, does everybody know what employer branding is? That's a question out to the room. Do we know why we do it? Do we understand it or not?
I think in the okay, so I'll have a shot at this. So talent is extremely scarce, okay, and that is a resource like all other resources. To attract this talent, they need to kind of know where they're getting into, especially for startups like us. It's extremely difficult to attract these talents. When you do employer branding, you need to, like any brand, you need to explain what's your value proposition. What type of culture are you talking about? What type of things that these employees can expect? So it's a fun place to work. It's a place where I can learn. It's a place. So all of these are part of the employer branding.
Absolutely. In a nutshell, employer branding is how you market your company to desired job seekers. So it's about what is the perception in the market of your business, and then how is that going to attract the people that you want in your organization. And, you know, dependent on where you are in your journey, whether you're starting up or whether you're a global multinational brand, the type of individual that you want to attract can be very, very different. So that employee branding may shift over time, but it's important that the message from the company outward is what you want to attract inward, okay? I've been doing some research. I wanted to try and get some data, and a study was done by Octopost, and it was back in 2019. But the way that the trends have moved and business has changed, I would say this is probably even higher now. But 73% of millennials found their current job through social media, which is absolutely insane. I mean, I remember when I was looking for my first job, and I was like walking into offices with a CV, trying to say, hey, can someone speak to me? Is there any opportunities? And that just doesn't happen anymore. And, you know, again, it's so important that wherever you are in your business journey, you are utilizing social media in many different channels, depending on the type of people that you're trying to attract to your business. I'm now going to touch on kind of 4 or 5 points that will help you think about what your employer proposition is and how to kind of define that, and how you can hopefully try and roll this out internally with your leadership team. The first thing that you need to do is to really define your employer branding goals. So is there anybody on the call that's doing this, or has sat with the team and said, you know, we need to start thinking about what our goals are? Or is everybody on this to kind of figure out how to do this better?
Probably the second one.
Okay.
Same here.
Okay. In terms of goals that need to be set, I'm just going to kind of give you a few sort of examples of the types of goals. And you don't have to run with these, but these would probably be the top sort of 8 to 10 goals that you would set as an employer, and why you would look to define your employee branding. So first of all, it's to either get more job applications through the door. If any of you have worked with us or spoken to us, we don't actually use any job boards at all. We don't use Bait, we don't use Indeed, none of them, because they're a complete waste of time, and nobody has the time to go through those applications. Of course, we use LinkedIn, and I'll show you later on, it's our job advertisements don't actually increase our following. They don't actually attract people to food people. It's all of the other stuff that we do that makes people either want to work for us or work for our clients that we represent in the market. But as a company, if you're looking to get more job applications, you really need to work on your employee branding. The other one is to get more high quality candidates. When people start to understand what your company is doing on the inside, you'll get much, let's call it, warmer leads coming through the door, because they would already have some sort of belief or passion or want to be a part of what it is you're trying to create. Increase online engagement, and this for me is really, really big. Obviously, we're a recruitment company, and recruitment, honestly, is quite a boring industry. You know, it hasn't changed for many, many years, and recruiters are quite restrictive people. They never want to talk about who they work with. They're scared that other people are going to take their work, and they're very, very protective of what they do. And when we set up, I said to Lucas, like, we're going to flip it. We're going to be completely different. We're going to talk about the brands that we work with. We're going to share the food that they create. We're going to talk about all the collaborations that we do in the market. And if we're good enough at what we do, we won't lose those clients. And again, this is how we've increased our online engagement. You might want to increase candidate engagement. You want to increase your employee brand awareness. You may want to build trust with current candidates, okay? You may want to get more visits to your career page, which is something we'll talk about a bit later on. More applications through social media. Increase referral rates, which in my opinion is the best form of hiring. And most importantly, increase offer acceptance rates. There's actually a stat that if you have a poor employer brand or you have a bad reputation in the market, the typical rule of thumb is you'll have to pay 10% more for the people that you want. So just remember that when you're thinking about how you position yourself online as an individual and as a brand. The second thing we need to consider is how we identify your candidate persona. And I touched on this earlier on, and essentially, not every person is right for every business, no matter how good or bad they are. It's about the company itself being able to identify the ideal person for that organization. And I actually did a talk at Gulf Food last week on our Who hiring technique that removes emotion from the hiring process. And again, if anybody wants to talk through that on a separate note, we can also run through that. But it's really important that once you identify that candidate persona, you really stick to that and you don't sway just because you like somebody or you have a common interest. This is a really crucial step. Without knowing who your perfect candidate is, you won't be able to send targeted message to the candidates that you want to attract. And I've got a little cheat sheet that I found online, which again, this will be shared afterwards for you all to look at. But this is essentially the things that you need to consider when you're thinking about your ideal candidate. What are their motivations? Every single person's motivations are different. And I think particularly in the UAE right now, people's motivations have shifted massively since COVID. So pre-COVID, this was a haven where people could come and earn tax-free money and send it back home and save for all the things that they wanted to do. And for a lot of people, when they arrived, it was kind of a 2 to 3 year stopgap where they would hopefully earn enough money to be able to do the things they wanted to do in their home country. Now, I've been here 16 years and, I said I'll be here for 2, and lo and behold, I'm here. I'm still here today. But the mindset and the behaviors of candidates that we've seen has definitely moved from pay and financial gain to security, to what's in it for me, which is what we'll talk about a bit later on, and what happens if we go through this again. So again, people's motivations and how you speak to people has shifted. And you definitely need to kind of tap into that as an employer, because now I'm not saying let's go and get people for less money. That's not the case. But what I'm saying is when you get to offer stage and you're trying to negotiate somebody to get them across the line, and let's say in a startup environment you can't pay those big salaries, there's so many more motivations now that people are open to and listening to and are a deciding factor in their decision making. So I'll share this with you. I'm not going to go through every single one because I want to try and keep this punchy and top line, but we can go offline afterwards and talk more about this if you wish. The next thing is to really define your employee value proposition. So it's what we do at Food People, and it's something that I never had in my career at all, is when we hire somebody, most companies will do a 6-month probation period, and it gets to 6 months and you sit down in a room and you say, how was your first 6 months? And they say, it was good, it was bad, I don't like this, I love that. And you as an employer say, hey, you've been performing really well, you're going to stay with us moving forward. Or do you know what, you've not hit KPIs, you've not really hit the culture, and unfortunately we're going to part ways today. And for me, I think that's really poor. I think, there are so many other opportunities where you can have touch points with people. Think how much time, cost, and effort goes into finding someone to join your business. And so many employers, the day they join, they just think it's done. So what we do at Food People is we have a 1-month review, we have a 3-month review, we have a 6-month review, and we have a 12-month review. And within 4 weeks, if that person is having challenges or something's not happy, then we will try and do our best as a leadership team to try and rectify that and make changes to make sure that we can overcome some of those obstacles. Because us as recruiters find it really, really tough to actually find recruitment consultants because there are not that many good ones in Dubai, if I'm being honest. So I would highly recommend that when you're bringing somebody on, you're asking them questions from day one throughout, how they feel, what can we change? What have you seen in other places that you work that we could maybe adapt here that would help benefit us? All these types of questions will help you have a stronger EVP. So I suppose I'll just quickly run around the room now. Do any of you know why your current employees have decided to work for you? Does anybody ask that question?
Well, actually, the last employee we had, she sent us, we had a picture of someone eating a ribeye steak.
Okay.
She just replied to the story as, I want her job. So we replied back, you know what? Okay, we're looking for someone for customer service.
Okay.
And let's have a chat. And from there, and it came that we hired her, and it came through an Instagram story at the end of the day.
Okay, so question, have you then spoken about that online?
About, I'm sorry?
So that scenario, have you then spoken about that online? Like, have you gone back to social media with her, for example, eating that steak, and then her talking about that journey?
No, not yet, but maybe when we're going to recruit someone else, we could do this, yeah.
But you should do that beforehand, because if you do it when you want to recruit somebody, it's a reactive move. Whereas if you start doing things like that now, you know, there are going to be other people that see that and are like, I want to be a part of that. So it's all about building layers of trust and layers of kind of belief and wanting to be a part of the journey that that lady has been on, because then it's believable. You know, if she's on there talking about her journey, like that's a huge, huge thing. And when people start seeing things like that, they want the same. There's like a jealousy that kind of comes within, and they say, oh, well, I don't get that where I am. So that's a really, really good story. You should use that and then make some sort of marketing, and it doesn't have to cost money. You just do it with your phone and get it out there. And this is how you start to build these layers of value. So what I would recommend is speak to all of your employees and ask them why they work for you, you know, why they chose you over other companies. Another good story is, do you know why they stay with you? Another good question is, do you know why they stay? You know, again, some of you are startups, some of you have been in companies that are a little bit longer, but one thing that we're really proud of is we have a high retention rate, and we ask this question a lot. We say, you know, what do you love about food people? Why are you here? If you're approached, like, what would you look for outside? And I promise you, if I asked this question in lockdown, the answers would have been hugely different. So we're a very collaborative environment. We've got a good culture. People enjoy working with each other, and we help each other day in, day out. Lockdown hit. Luke and I didn't know what to do. We have quite a young team, which we have to develop every single day. And out of nowhere, that was removed from us. And we could see our culture dropping. All of our projects literally got closed, because obviously we work a lot in the restaurant space, and nobody had nothing to do. Everybody literally had nothing to do. So we were like, what are we going to do? And this is when we started to kind of push people to do initiatives like order local food, help support local restaurants, talk about stories online, do education pieces on LinkedIn. And I'll show you a trend in a second about how our following increased through lockdown, although we actually had no jobs on. So again, these types of questions are really important to ask your team. You know, what do they like most about you? These are all questions that you should be asking that will help you build that successful brand strategy, okay? And again, that'll just sort of help you define that. When you are looking to define this, and when you are looking to kind of think about this ideal persona, there's something that, and I don't know if you've heard this analogy, what's in it for me? And it's something that you really need to think about, particularly if you're a startup, because there are certain aspects that businesses can offer candidates out there in the market. Some of it's compensation. And as I mentioned, compensation used to be everything in this region, but it is starting to shift. The other is benefits, okay? Another one would be career development, some sort of education, stability, that kind of thing. The working environment, you know, dependent on which type of environment you are, it's suited to different people. We have a very autonomous environment. Some other environments in recruitment are very micromanaged. So it's important that you define this from the outset and are very transparent with people that you're trying to bring in. And of course, culture. Now, it's almost impossible for a company to have all 5 of these. Okay, so what you should do is look at these and decide which ones are most suited to you, because we work with a lot of startups, and a lot of startups, they can't necessarily offer the compensation, but what they can offer is an incredible culture and an absolutely incredible career journey where they can develop and they can wear all these different hats, they can roll their sleeves up, get their hands dirty, and learn from many different kind of entrepreneurs around the table that have so many different skills. If you then become more of a let's say larger business or a heavy regional, then maybe it's the benefits. Maybe they start to offer things like schooling or family benefits, whereas in a startup they wouldn't be able to do that. So it's really important that you work with the leadership team and say, okay, where do we sit here, and what is it that we're going to be able to offer these individuals that want to come into our business? Why do they want to join us today? So again, I'll share this afterwards so you can have a look at that and we can talk more if needs be. I just want to talk about EVP, and because this essentially will then come into what your values are as a business. And for me, these are so we have external values and we have internal values. And there's actually a TED talk by the CEO of Brewdog, and I love Brewdog. I think what they've done as a brand is incredible, like from being rejected at Dragon's Den to now planting trees to be fully sustainable. Like if you follow their journey in the UK, it's crazy. And he talks about having internal and external values and how that then kind of loops round into your customer. So again, I can share some links with you on that, but I think personally it's important to have both internal and external. So our values to our client is this. So when we pitch, these are the 4 things that we talk about. Okay, but internally we have images all over our office and photos and so on and so forth that talk about creating your own path. So we have a very flat structure. Anybody that comes into Food People can grow and develop, and they can navigate in whichever part of the food industry they want to. Another one is believe in yourself. We've had people come into this business that were super quiet, a bit introvert, and over the past kind of 12 to 18 months, we've really pushed them to their limits, to the point of now they're kind of doing videos and so on and so forth. So having that kind of self-belief for us is really, really important. And the third one, which I've been in recruitment a long time, and this is difficult to find in recruiters, is stay humble. Recruitment is essentially a sales-driven business, and it's very, very easy for people to make a placement and get super excited and celebrate and become quite arrogant in recruitment or in a sales environment. And we flatten that out. Of course, we celebrate wins, but in our business, we say that everyone needs to stay humble. The moment they leave the office, remember where they are. Have that kind of humility about them. And again, this is something that we do differently, because in recruitment business I work for, previously, there's always kind of 1 or 2 that sit on their high horse, and I just don't agree with it. So these are our internal and external values. Do you guys have values at the moment? Yeah? Okay. And are they kind of clear? Does everybody know them before they come into the business, or is it something they learn?
We're working on it being something they know during the interview process, or at least at offer process, because like you said, maybe if we have some more external versus internal, then it would make sense if they had them during the interview process, but they at least have them at offer stage. That's what we're working on now. And then, but yeah, it's very clear from day one. And then in every evaluation, they're kind of just made aware of them again and again. So we have 4 evaluations in a year.
Good. And I think what also works well is if you try and define some questions about your value that kind of highlight your values without telling them first, and to try and challenge if they fit into into the values that you've decided. The 4th one is making sure that you define the channels in which you want to promote your employee brand. So there are so many channels that we can work on. I'm going to show you a few now. And as a startup, you don't want to be spending any cash, right? You want to be doing this as cheap as possible to get the maximum return. There are around 10 touch points that you can use to help promote your employee branding. Many of these touch points are actual channels where you can self-promote, and a majority of them are free of charge. These are the typical methods that you should be thinking about when you're looking to push out your employer brand. So for us, as a recruitment company, of course, LinkedIn is our biggest channel that we use, but there are so many more. Lectures and workshops, I think, is a great one. This is something that we do. I'm doing a webinar now, and of course, for me, it's amazing to be part of the Endeavour team and collaborate, but equally, I know that this is going to get pushed out on LinkedIn, and it's going to then filter back down to the Food People brand, which comes on top. We've put ourselves in really difficult situations, I suppose, where we were never, when we got into this, we didn't know that we were going to be on stage talking about recruitment and HR practice and different tools and things like that. I'm a little bit more comfortable. Luke, my business partner, isn't at all, but I've kind of pushed him to do it, because at the end of the day, this is what is going to attract people to your business, and it does start at the top. And I'll talk about that later on. The more that content you can get out there in the market through these channels will just make your hiring strategy a lot easier, because people would have already bought in to the leaders, what you do as a business, your brand, and so on and so forth. So again, we can talk about these in a bit more detail, but top line, these are the 8 key channels that you need to be considering when looking to promote your employee brand. Another little stat here, 95% of candidates identify reputation as a key factor when considering a new job. And we talk to leaders and HR people about this all the time. I've been in recruitment for a long time, and I've seen some horrific candidate journeys where, there's an interview booked and the person's left there for 15 minutes, or sometimes the person's gone home for the afternoon. They are told they're going to meet somebody, and then they meet somebody else. All of these things actually not only impact the recruitment process, but they actually impact your brand as a whole. So if somebody has a bad experience going through a hiring process with you, or as an employee, the likelihood is, particularly in food, when it's a product that everyone has to, eat or drink every single day or a few times a week, people will talk to their friends about their experience, and the knock-on impact is they won't eat or drink your product anymore. We were talking yesterday, Anusha, about a story that you had, and we won't mention the company now, but it's one of the large aggregators, I'll say that, and the person was asked to do a case study after 3 or 4 rounds of interview. And this is quite a common thing within startups. They want to understand, what is it you're going to bring to the table? What's your route to market strategy? How are you going to change things? And candidates, at this stage, when they've invested that amount of time, put a lot of effort in to making sure that what they're going to present, it might be wrong, okay, but they've gone to the effort, they've taken the time, and they've done it. They presented it, and they never even got back to them. And now that person will never use that aggregator again. And I absolutely promise you, every time he has a coffee with somebody, or dinner with somebody, or a phone call, or someone goes to order food around him, he will remember, or she will remember that story, and will try to make someone change their mind on which aggregator they use. So, that the candidate journey, don't just think about that person coming in to do a job. There is such a wider audience that it can impact. So again, this is a really, really important stat. This was a study done in 2019, again by Octopost. And again, I can send you some links afterwards where there's a whole host of stats and data on employee branding for you to look at. I just want to touch on our performance on LinkedIn. Now, I mentioned earlier there was many different channels that you can use to promote your employer branding. For us as a recruitment company, LinkedIn is number 1. We have Instagram, but to be honest, Instagram is challenging. It can be costly. Everything we do on LinkedIn, we mirror it on Instagram, but the performance on LinkedIn completely outshines Instagram. And of course, it really depends on your target audience. We're in very much a B2B environment, or a very business professional environment. So the LinkedIn platform works wonders for us. If we look at Carnestore, for example, which is a bit more B2C, am I right in saying that? It's more B2C, yeah? Instagram.
But more B2C, yeah.
Yeah, I would assume, and do you know what? A lot of food service distributors that used to be B2B obviously made the shift to B2C through COVID, through the COVID pandemic. Now, if you are more B2C, then absolutely, you know, the Facebooks, the Instagrams will work for you better. But for us, LinkedIn is definitely our #1 platform. So every year we invest heavily into LinkedIn. All of that, we have the top accounts for every single consultant. So we get a lot of insights from LinkedIn. This is how our following is growing on LinkedIn. This is 12 months, last 12 months. So it went up 357%. We're now over 45,000. This has increased. You can see here the trend, right? And a lot of people say, oh, it's because of the pandemic. It's because so many people lost their jobs, and then everybody, you know, was out in the market trying to find people to help them find a new role. It actually wasn't the case, because as I mentioned, yes, people were looking for jobs, but we actually had no jobs. So 80% of our pipeline dropped off overnight. And it was at this point where we said, right, what are we going to do? And rather than kind of bury our head in the sand, what we did is we launched We Are Food People, where we invited leaders and owners of food companies in the UAE to come on and talk about their business and what they're doing as a brand and what they're trying to achieve. And then we put that out online, and we used our following to help boost their following. Equally, as I mentioned earlier, we did initiatives where we only ordered from UAE brands, food, lunch, and then we posted it. And then people started to get a feel for who we were as a company and where our kind of ethics lied as a brand. And this is when it started to grow. And you can see this shift in followers, which is now growing like 5,000-6,000 a week, because of the branding piece that we did on Facebook. I'm sorry, on LinkedIn. Now, what's even more interesting is this is organic versus spend. So we spent nothing. We spent zero on online branding. We've spent no money on trying to buy followers or do whatever. All we've done is we've done organic content where people get a feel for what's happening within our business. And again, we started this here, July, August. This is when we started doing it. And if you go to our YouTube page, you'll see it there. Just so you don't think I'm making this up. But if you go back over time, over the timeline, you'll see where this activates. And this is what I was talking about for you at Carnes Store. When you start doing videos of the lady that joined because she saw somebody eating a steak, this is the type of impact that you can get. And again, highlight, we haven't spent a penny, okay? And just to kind of back that up, these are our 3 biggest posts that we've ever had. And you'll see that not one of them is a job post. So when we put jobs up, the traction is minimal. When we put things up that we've done, whether it's a CSR, whether it's our Christmas party, whether it's this one here is talking about what we raised, you can see here, and I'm not sure how much you know about click-through rates and engagement rates, but as I mentioned earlier, the average engagement rate on LinkedIn is around 1%. You know, you can see here the type of traction that we got from these posts, because people were getting an insight into who we are as a business and the type of people that we are. And people, particularly at this time, wanted to be a part of that. I mean, this was Christmas, so this was before the pandemic, but we did this obviously when the Lebanon disaster happened. So the point I'm getting to is just to get people to love your brand and to apply for jobs and to be, it's not about just posting jobs and giving people opportunities. It's about really giving them an insight into what it's like within your company and what it's like to be a part of your brand, okay? This will give you an insight into the amount of what reach you can achieve on LinkedIn. So this is, again, last year. So with the followers that we gained last year and the engagement that we have on LinkedIn, we're able to reach 7.3 million people through the different layers of, you have like first, second, third tier layers. So again, it shows you that with zero spend, you know, as long as you start to put organic content up there that people are going to buy into, the actual reach is massive. Like when I saw this stat, I was taken back. I was like, how is that even possible? But when other people like things and share things and comment, it automatically goes through their own networks. And again, this is how you can organically build your brand online and again, attract the right people to your business. This will give you an idea of where we sit and other companies that are doing it well right now. So you can see here, again, this is over the last, I think, from February last year to almost to today. We sit here an average of just north of 5%. Pure Harvest, they're doing some great work. I mean, we're partnering with them and we're helping with them on their employee branding as well. But Sky Kurtz, their CEO, is interviewing everywhere. Their PR is really, really strong. And of course, they have got a lot of investment recently, which again, helps elevate them online. But I would recommend looking at Kotopi. You know, their employee branding is fantastic. Sweetheart Kitchen was really, really good at the start, but they've kind of died off a little bit. But you can go through this on your own company page and see where you sit against other businesses, okay? There's two messages that I want to close off on. And one of them is, there we go, that everybody is accountable and it starts at the top. As I said, when we started Food People, we were just running around in our car trying to find people jobs and make some money. And then year two, we were like, what are we going to do? And we decided to scale and to grow quite quickly. And what we did is we leveraged off relationships, like the Caterer magazine have been amazing to us. From that, we then got into Gulf Food. From that, you know, we've been the human capital partner for the F&B manufacturing group. This is me a couple of weeks ago talking about our journey and what we do for the food industry. The top right was at Middlesex University, talking to them about building a startup at their entrepreneur session. And these are things that honestly, like Luke and I are not super comfortable with. I mean, I've got more confident with them over time, but I knew that if we did things like this, it would help elevate our brand. And that's the most important thing. But the thing is, it needs to start at the top. It can't be just handed to HR or handed to, you know, one person. It needs to be a message company-wide. And one thing that we're really, really passionate about, and one thing that we push, and is actually a key measure within our business, is how each individual grows their own personal brand. So if you connect with any of our employees on LinkedIn, look at how active they are on LinkedIn, whether they're sharing news, insights, videos, facts, photographs. They're pushing their own personal brands, and everybody within the company needs to kind of understand that this is great for them, but also it's great for the brand. And particularly in a startup environment, this has to be the message throughout the company. But my point being, it needs to start at the top. Okay. The final message, guys, is your HR and recruitment team has a direct impact on your brand and marketing. And I will leave it at that. And we touched on it before. You know, if you've got people within HR, or you have, you know, functions that are part of the recruitment process, they need to understand that that candidate's perception of your business must remain positive, whether they are right or wrong for the job. Because you upset one person, word of mouth, particularly in the UAE, just rolls through. So, you know, particularly if you're a food business and you're a startup and you're trying to make it, you want this person to walk away from an interview scenario or an interview process, and if they haven't got the job, you still want them to go and buy your product and talk positively about it in the market. So every single person that's involved in recruitment, in HR, or is interviewing a candidate for your business, please remember it has a direct impact on your brand and your marketing. Okay? So that's it, guys. I hope that was valuable. This is our team. You can see they're all very happy. And these are our values at the back. But yeah, if anyone's got any questions, please feel free. equally, if you ever want to come for a coffee and talk about things face to face in the greens, we can also do that. But I hope this was valuable. I hope you took something away from it. And yeah, if there are any questions, fire away.
Greg, thank you very much. I think that was really, really interesting. The question that is in my mind, if I can start, is so how do you ensure? So you've got your employer branding piece done. You've got your EVP done. Okay, and how can you ensure that this tallies with that whole recruitment and employees journey, right? So that link, because if that link is not there, eventually things will kind of feel and look not right. Yeah. So how did you do it? How did you make sure that at every single point of that journey, whatever you set yourself to do through the employer branding and the EVP is well managed?
So I think for us, what we did is our values actually changed about 2 years ago when our team grew. Our initial values, I'm honest, I can't even remember them now, when Luke and I set out with Danny, who was our first employee, were very different to what they are today. And that was because our team grew. And what we did is we actually we did a training session with the whole team of what food people meant to them, what they thought that our business was, and we got them to do a number of different exercises within like an hour session. And from that, we draw out insights and information, which then help to kind of create what our values were. So we got the buy-in from the team in that. So they got the early buy-in early on. Now, for new employees, to make sure that they were aligned, and it was all about that review process. So rather than doing just 6-month probation review and saying yes, no, stay by, it was after 4 weeks, how are you getting on? What are you finding challenging? What can we improve on? Are there things in your previous business that we could maybe adopt here to help things improve? So again, you get buy-in early on because you're asking that employee after 4 weeks to potentially impact your organization. So for us, I think it's all about, buy-in, listening, acting upon what people say. And if for us, if someone makes a suggestion and we think that it's right, we'll roll it out immediately. We don't kind of ponder on it, or we don't ignore it. We roll with it and we test it. So I think it's about making sure it's very inclusive. Obviously, as you get bigger, this becomes a bit more difficult, but I would suggest if you look at Kotopi, they've managed to continue that through a rapid growth period. So I think for me, it's really about inclusion. It's about listening. It's about being able to react to what people want. And sometimes what they want, you can't do, but at least you've listened and you've taken it on board and you continue to get that buy-in. And as I said, I spoke to everybody, not everybody, maybe 6 or 7 of our guys off the cuff, and I said, what do you love about food people? And the answers were flat structure, it's collaborative, it feels like a family environment, even though it is very performance driven. Whereas if I would have asked them in COVID, I wouldn't want to think what the answers would be, because it was really, really, really tough. But what we did is, as soon as we got back in the office, we worked super, super hard to try and bring that inclusion back, that culture back. I think another important thing to consider is diversity as well. I think that really helps with employer branding and getting different insights and information from people from all over the world with different backgrounds. I think we have 5 different nationalities in a team of 13, and they all get along really, really well. But I think that's because when we interview them based on the values, and then we obviously ask them for their feedback and their insights throughout their first sort of 3, 6, 12 months. So I think for me, that's what's worked for us. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions, guys? No?
I guess.
Okay. Cool. Good. Well, look, honestly, I'll share all my details with you, with all of you, and